right, good morning, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion, and today we are going to take quite a trek up into the northern part of New York. We are going to vlog someone that I've been a big fan of since I was a kid. This is a real bucket lister for me, so hope you guys enjoy this. It's going to take us a while to get there, but I think it'll be worth it. I have a pretty good day planned. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins now. Okay, here's our subway. Just bought a Metro card. Let's roll. Okay, this is what we want. Grand Central, it says. Okay, that was easy enough. Now let's switch trains. Okay, that says Pershing Square and Grand Central Terminal. Beautiful terminal though. Had to check it out anyway. Alright, this is a madhouse, but I just bought a ticket to Hawthorne. That's where we're going to end up today. So we're going to take this track. Alright, here's our track. Cool, here's my train. This is basically the plan for now.
Scarsdale, Hartsdale, White Plains, North White Plains, Hawthorne, Pleasantville, Chappaqua.
Alright, we're the next stop. Alright, we made it. Now we have a 25-minute walk from the train station. Well, there's a little bit of a hint right there, one of those flags. Looks like it's over here somewhere. Well, we have arrived. A handful of extremely famous people are buried here, but there's one in particular I'm dedicated to finding today. Let's enter the gate of heaven. Very beautiful cemetery out here. It's incredible how many cemeteries there are out this direction. As I started getting close on the train, I was looking on the map and it looked like about 6 or 7 cemeteries all side by side. Who we've come to see today is widely considered the greatest baseball player of all time. And one heck of a big personality. Well, there he is. A little moment of silence as we walk up. The Babe. This is really a true honor to get to be here and pay respects to the Babe. This guy was absolutely larger than life in every way. He was the most famous baseball player with the biggest personality, 670 slugging average when the average Hall of Famer was 500. The guy did it all. He made home runs something that were to be expected. In his day, before he was doing all that, most teams maybe 50 home runs for the team for a season. Babe would end up doing that on a regular basis, season after season. And he started out with kind of a rough childhood. I mean, he was raised in Baltimore and his father owned a saloon and he was just a total troublemaker. Babe would get in trouble for throwing rocks at police officers, ditching school, drinking the alcohol in his father's saloon. Got to be so much that eventually Babe's parents would put him in a reform school at the age of 8 years old, which was really hard on him, but in an odd way it was probably meant to be, because there he discovered the love of baseball. The fathers there in that Catholic school it was actually St. Mary's, they would teach him baseball and he would excel. He was always big, he always had a giant thirst for life and everything in it, and that would pretty much carry him through his life. He would end up getting first signed by the Baltimore Orioles, and within just a few months they traded him to the Red Sox, and he became a star athlete for the Boston Red Sox. He was first known as a pitcher, and a really good pitcher. I mean, this guy was one of the greats for that day. And he was so good that when he wasn't pitching on his off days, they would have him play outfield because he was such a good bat. Babe was always kind of an everyman, even when he was the biggest thing in the world. They said that one of the kids that used to sell peanuts at Fenway Park mentioned that Babe would come in before games and hang out with the kids that were selling peanuts, and he would help them put the peanuts in bags, and then when he was done, he would drop like a $10 or $20 bill on the table and tell them all to split it up. And they also said because of his upbringing and being in that reform school, he didn't want any of the kids to go down the path that he went down. So if he heard him cuss, one of the kids as a grown adult said he would say, "GD, don't say things like that, GD." You know, like total in the true form of the Babe. So the Babe was so good in Boston that once he was traded, you might say, well, who would trade him if he's that good? Well, the owner of the Red Sox apparently put a lot of money into various ventures, and one of those being the theater. And when some of his productions weren't bringing in an income, he had to do something. And so the Babe was a pretty big commodity. He was still very young. It was the early 20s, and he decided to sell him to the New York Yankees for a large sum. And that's what people say started the curse of the Bambino. They say that was why the Red Sox ended up not winning a World Series for decades. And but eventually they did win one, and the curse was broken. But the Babe was moved over to New York in a time where a lot of people really weren't going to games. There was really no excitement, and he brought excitement. And when he came over, the Yankees built a new stadium based on the draw that he would have, and they titled it The House That Ruth Built. And for season after season, he would hit home runs, steal bases. Yeah, believe it or not, people think, oh, this guy was just a big heavy guy that could only swing a bat. But no, he had a great arm. He could steal. He used to steal home. He just really could do it all. But a big part of what people loved about him is that when he did interviews, he was very open. He was very childlike. And the Babe had no problem, you know, if somebody wanted to do a bit or some kind of gag, you know, putting a beard on him or having him pose, you know, with like a weird animal or something. He had no problem like hamming it up and doing that. And they said when people would interview him, he had this great quality where he could make everybody that talked to him feel like they were his best friend. And so when people wrote stories about the Babe, they wrote it as though they were writing about their best friend. So they kept all of his crazy behavior, you know, that was happening off the field out of the headlines. You see, the Babe loved baseball, but he also loved food, he loved drinking, he loved partying, he loved sex, and he loved to do it all as often as he could. And he became legendary for that as well. Whenever he would come into a town to play a team, the headlines would always say like Babe's in town or Babe homered or whatever, you know, they would always make some big deal about the Babe. And so when he came into Chicago, the White Sox, some of the players for the White Sox decided to, what they were gonna do is they were gonna take him out for a night on the town the night before the game, get him hammered, and then he wouldn't be able to play the next day, or if he could, he wouldn't be worth anything. And so they took him out, and he, one of the guys that was there told in an interview, he said, first off, he drank a pint of scotch on the train before we even got to where we were going. Then when he got off, he wasn't quite drunk, he just had like kind of a good buzz going. He walks into a bar, has them serve him up a drink, and in one swallow, he takes down the entire drink with the ice cubes and tells them to set him up with more. He partied all night long, comes to the park the next day, kind of wobbly, goes up to bat, hits one over the fence, has a great game, ends up beating the White Sox. And after the game, they said as the White Sox were leaving the field, leaving the dugout, the Babe runs up and says, "Where are we going tonight, fellas?" Now the Babe played 20 great seasons, and that means there were 20 years worth of insane baseball stories to go along with it, like him pointing in the 1932 World Series out to center field, calling his shot. Some people say he didn't, other people say he did. People that were on his team said he did. They said they talked to him afterward and he said, well, you saw me point, you saw where it went, what do you think I did? Now the Babe did so much for baseball. I mean, more than just being a guy who was a good representative of it, you know, to the children and just a nice guy, a guy that people like to watch. He was always smiling, he was always happy, he was always in a good mood. He also had these great stories that people would tell, you know, that you almost couldn't believe, like they sound like a myth, but they were true. One was a little kid said he was Babe's caddy one day out on the golf course, and he said, you know, he said, I like you, kid, and while we were out, whoever Babe was playing, he ended up winning like 50 or 100 bucks off that person. And he said the next day I go to school and they call me out of class out into the hallway, and there's the principal with Babe Ruth, and the principal says the Babe wants to take you golfing. It's okay with us if you want to go. And so the kid took off from school and went golfing for the day with Babe Ruth. They also said one little girl whose father worked at Yankee Stadium was in the hospital, needed an operation. The family didn't have the money for it, and the doctor told her, oh, don't worry, it's all taken care of because you and I have the same last name. And in reality, she found out later that Babe Ruth had found out about it and he had went and paid for the operation without letting anyone know. He also, they said, would right in the middle of the game while he was playing this is just like one more of those great myths or one of those great stories of the legend of Babe. He would tell one of the clubhouse kids, hey, go down and get me a couple of hot dogs and a couple of Cokes, and he'd eat hot dogs with sauerkraut and relish and everything during a game. Sometimes he'd walk up into the stands and order one and have them purchased for the kids that were standing around there. He was just one of those guys that was larger than life. They said he would, when other players like Gehrig wouldn't sign autographs, the Babe would stand out there for an hour signing autographs for everyone. He would walk around with like a bag of baseballs and he would sign them for people that he ran into because he just knew people were gonna want that. And they said in those days he was using a fountain pen that was known for like splashing or getting all over your clothes, and he didn't care. He would still sign the autographs. He was even a really great advocate for baseball because in those days when he was playing, baseball didn't really go beyond St. Louis. There were no teams west of there, and in the off season the Babe would hop on a train and he would go out to California. He would make his rounds. He would go to the kids who couldn't see him, that had only read about him. He would go and wave to him from a train, or he would do expositions in Palm Springs and Brea and up and down the California coast. This guy was just an absolute legend, and sadly, you know, at the end of his career with the Yankees, he was being paid well, but he just wasn't performing quite up to their standards. And when his contract came up, you want to know how they treated the Babe after all these years? In the house that Ruth built, they offered him a contract for $1 a year or his unconditional release. So the biggest name in sports was kicked out to the curb by the owner of the Yankees. He went and played for the Boston Braves for another season, even hit 3 home runs in one game there, and then basically retired. He eventually came back as a first base or a third base coach for the Brooklyn Dodgers on the belief that he would at some point get a chance to manage, but he never got that chance, and eventually would become another athlete who had retired, who was out you know, doing commercials for car products and different things, just because he was so likable, and you know, people wanted to see him and he didn't want to go away. And then sadly he got very, very sick in the mid-40s, and nobody ever bothered to tell him that he had cancer. He just kept getting worse and worse and worse, and he had bad headaches, and his voice was getting really raspy. And literally they said they never told him because they were afraid that he might like want to kill himself or something like that. He might jump out of a window if he found out that it was terminal or if it was as bad as it was. So they never told him really up until the very end. But you can see right here, I mean, we've been to quite a few baseball players' graves and nobody has as much as the Babe does here. And when he passed away, in very, very classy form, the Yankees did hold a funeral for Babe Ruth and had a wake where the Babe was placed in the outfield of Yankee Stadium, and the fans could line up and they could all walk through and pay their last respects to the Babe in Yankee Stadium, the house that he built, smelling the grass, smelling that Bronx air, looking out at the field that he had such a great history in. May the divine spirit that animated Babe Ruth to win the crucial game of life inspire the youth of America. Cardinal Spellman. George Herman, the Babe Ruth. Now, I got into the Babe, ironically, from the Babe movie, starring John Goodman, a movie that probably isn't really the greatest movie, but I think it captured a lot of his spirit in the movie, and I've been a fan ever since. I think I was probably in 4th grade when I saw that movie, and I started reading everything on the Babe I could find. I would watch documentaries constantly on HBO, the When It Was a Game series, and things like that, and he's just always been larger than life to me. Like they say, look at the guy. He was, in every way, he was lovable. Nobody's looked like him, behaved like him. He's just not, nobody has grabbed that spirit as a baseball player that just brought everybody in and made everybody want to hang on what was going on in the sport quite like he did. For a long time, he had the single season home run record, 60 home runs before Roger Maris broke that. For a long time, he had the all-time home run record before Hank Aaron broke that, and then Barry Bonds would eventually break that. But this guy did it first. The Babe was a guy who, before anybody else was hitting home runs, he was the guy out there changing the game with one swing. In some ways, managers and other players in baseball were upset at Babe Ruth. They didn't like Babe Ruth because of his home run ability. You know, people like Ty Cobb said, I can hit a home run anytime I want. I just don't want to do that for a game. I don't want to change a game like that. He prided himself on singles and stealing bases and getting hit to hit to hit to add those runs. But Babe Ruth, like I said, could just come in, hammer a home run and tie up a game, or give the team a lead in one swing. Despite any shortcomings the Babe may have ever had, he always gave back. He always made life better for the people that were there to see him, and he always gave them his time. The Great Bambino. Rest in peace, Babe. There are a lot of famous people buried here. James Cagney, Sal Mineo, Bess Houdini. But I'd kind of like to find one more Yankee that's buried here if I can before we go. And luckily the person we're looking for is in the same section. You can see there's a handful of baseball bats and baseballs over here. Alfred Manuel Billy Martin. The great player, great manager, Yankees second baseman. What a guy. This guy was an absolute spitfire on the field, man. He was in people's faces. He was the thing that legends are made of. And, you know, just to show his personality, it says, I may not have been the greatest Yankee to put on the uniform, but I was the proudest. And that's probably true. I mean, the only reason, I mean, as far as I know, the only reason the Yankees ever traded him was because Billy was a partier, and he was a guy that could get people to go and party with him, and one of those people was Mickey Mantle, and they just kind of felt that, or at least from everything I've read, they just kind of felt that Billy was a bad influence on Mickey, and, you know, Billy was a bit of a hellraiser anyway, so they just figured, you know, maybe it's time to ship him out. And Billy was a lot of places. I mean, he had a career with the Minnesota Twins and the A's, and he was a little bit of everywhere and had success everywhere. This is a guy who, you know, he didn't have to just be the Yankee manager to be successful. He won championships elsewhere. Let's check out this headstone. Did you notice that it's got his retired baseball number built into it? Nothing on the other side. In great Yankee fashion, they would always give the best players the youngest numbers, and Billy was number 1. So there on both sides, you can see there's a 1 over here, and then 1 over here as well. Yeah, you can see people have left out here. There's a New York Yankees patch over there, and they've got some cans of beer here for him. And it's kind of cool for me to see that baseball card, because that was the first Billy Martin baseball card I ever had, and that was the way I had ever first heard of him. When you're a kid and you first start collecting baseball cards, you don't have that many, so you always remember the faces of the earliest ones, and I always remember that card. Then you can probably see down there where it says "Until we meet again." Here you can see right across from his grave, there's a matching bench to his headstone that says "Beloved Husband." Okay, I just mapped where I want to go next, and by train it's going to take an hour and a half, or by Uber it'll take 35 minutes. So I opted for the Uber. We're going to get in an Uber and we're going to head to the Bronx. There is the new Yankee Stadium. Well, here we are, the new Yankee Stadium. I wanted to show it to you. This is not the house that Ruth built, but once they tore down the old Yankee Stadium, they put some fields there that could be utilized by the youth, and they actually have one of the fields in the exact location where the field was in Yankee Stadium, so we're gonna go check that out. It's called Heritage Park. It actually looks like they're gonna have a game here in a little while. Maybe I'll buy a ticket and go. Yep, definitely a game today. But look at this, right here. There's the Babe. Here's another one. I want to go check out the team store, see if they have any Babe Ruth stuff in there. Then we'll go over to Heritage Park. Here we go. That's kind of cool, but I can't find any Babe Ruth stuff. That's the logo I remember as a kid. The Mattingly years. So they actually told me the only Babe Ruth thing they have is that framed picture up there. That's too bad. No shirts or anything. Is that a coincidence, or did they do that for Mariano Rivera? Just beyond these walls is Heritage Park. Now I believe it's not this field being positioned where Yankee Stadium was, but I believe it's that field over there. You know, that was a really rough one. I did not like seeing them demolish Yankee Stadium or stopping to play there in 2008 when they decided that. I just thought it was, you know, this was the house that Ruth built. I thought it was sacred ground. And I really believe that the whole purpose in them doing that was for the luxury boxes. They wanted that money from those luxury boxes that everybody has to have now, but it's too bad tradition didn't hold up. But they did put a park here for youth to enjoy in the exact same spot, so I guess we can live with that. Check this out though. This is cool just to see the grounds where Yankee Stadium would have been, the real Yankee Stadium. You can see the new stadium from over here. And there in the distance you can see the big bat. Let's go on in. This was the field. This is where the original Yankee Stadium would have been. Can you just imagine Babe Ruth up here to bat, left-handed? As he's up here, all the Chicago Cubs are screaming at him, yelling things from the dugouts over here. He's standing up there to bat, yelling back at him, instigating him. Let's walk out to center field. I want to show you what they put on the fence out there. There's the new stadium. That's how close they are. Even if the field's not here anymore, this is still sacred ground to me. Mantle, Martin, Cheater, Ruth, Gehrig, Whitey Ford, they all played on these grounds. Thurman Munson, Don Mattingly, Alex Rodriguez. Some legendary names. Mariano Rivera. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes it rains. So over here in this corner field, they have a little commemoration to Lou Gehrig. Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. So let's go ahead and go take a look at the big bat while we're over here. And there it is, the big bat. Too bad they didn't put anybody's name on it, but pretty cool right here at the subway stop. But here's a little history of the stadium on the ground. It started in May of 1922. Began on 10 acres of land costing $2.5 million. First game was played before a crowd of 74,000. Babe Ruth hit the first home run. No surprise there. I'm guessing this is the place to be. They have baseball bats as door handles. Here's the artist. I'm buying a ticket for tonight's game. Check that out inside the ticket office. All right, looks like I'm gonna see the Yankees play the Indians tonight. Getting a little something for the game tonight in honor of the Babe. Check out his work. Well, I just found a new shirt too. Oh, this is cool. When I was a kid, I always had a dream of going to Yankee Stadium and seeing a game, and just so happens that when I got here to vlog it, I saw them laying out everything for the game and I said, let's go. So we're gonna go. That's the way things work sometimes. We're lined up. All right, we are inside Yankee Stadium pre-game. Let's go check out the field. They do have a great team this year, so it should be a great game no matter what. All right, it looks like we missed Yankee batting practice, but we have some action on the field with the Indians. Let's walk down here a little bit. There you can see they're bragging about their 27 world championships. I believe that's still the most in any sport. There's your behind home plate view. I think my seats are in this level right over here somewhere. This was one of the big essential reasons I wanted to come to the game, to show you this. Look at all the numbers and all the plaques. There's Billy. There's the Babe's plaque. That is great. A great ball player, a great man, a great American. There's the 3. There's Jeter's. There's Billy Martin, Casey's boy. A man who only knew one way to play, to win. Life-size bobbleheads of Mickey Mantle and Babe Ruth here. Look at him go. Uh-oh, maybe somebody should have shown this picture to Pete Rose. Betting prohibited. Well, here are my seats for the night. Well, goodbye my friends. I hope you guys enjoyed this vlog, checking out the graves of Babe Ruth, Billy Martin, the former home of the Yankees and the current home of the Yankees. Have a great night. We will see you all tomorrow. Goodbye.